Fresh killer.
Hello to whoever may listen to this in our increasingly unimaginable future. If you hear ambient noise, whatever it may be, from my buzzing refrigerator to the rush of the BART train going by, please just ignore it or forgive it. We're in our homes, not soundproof studios. Plus, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm Keenan Norris. I teach American literature and creative writing at San Jose State University. I'm speaking today with Professor Roger Porter. This is one in a series of interviews that I'm doing with scholars, engaging them about writers and confinement. Whether that confinement be criminal incarceration, prisoners of war, the enslaved island castaways, or agoraphobes, I figure given our current quarantine times that it might be informative, instructive, even inspirational to consult the literary past, and in particular those writers from Machiavelli to Machiavelli who created out of confinement the books, the poems, and plays that we still read today. Today we'll be talking about Etheridge Knight, one of the leading poets of the Black Arts movement. My guest is Roger Porter, who is a literature professor at Laney College here in Oakland, California. Roger is the author of The Souls of Hood Folk. We're also in the same writing group together, along with Nathan Jones, author of Black Man in Europe, and Derek Newton, author of The Urban Legend of Billy Doo. Roger, thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking time out of your quarantine to speak with me. A few days ago when last we met as a group, I first floated this idea of doing a series of interviews on writers in confinement. And he said, what about Etheridge Knight? Or, you should talk about Etheridge Knight. So I put it to you. I said, why don't you come on and talk about Etheridge Knight? So you are my first interview subject. Thanks so much once again. Let's get started.
Regarding Etheridge Knight, I have been a fan of his work, a few of his poems. My goodness, like a very long, at least since undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of his imprisonment and how that impacts his outlook on life and how that outlook on life manifests itself through poetry. It resonated with me because in the family that I grew up in, there were, me being a Black male, there would oftentimes be cousins and uncles that would have stories that took place behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes, like, when it would veer into that direction, now these stories are very, very precious for me because they were like unspoken rules.
Mm-hmm.
About, so as far as jail or incarceration, you were never supposed to ask about, something like, how was it being in jail? Or what was it like? Like, you never could ask.
Mm-hmm.
So when they felt comfortable enough or they were intoxicated enough or whatever happened and these stories came out, like, they were very, very precious because it was something that I think that they tried really hard to suppress or only speak on when they were, like, surrounded by other people that had been through the same thing. And I was, like, a lot younger than them. They didn't want me to follow these footsteps. So they were selective. And so when I started reading Etheridge Knight, I felt a lot of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like, it felt very authentic,
Mm-hmm.
and warm, and he's a Black man being raw and honest about his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really fell in love with one poem in particular called The Idea of Ancestry. It's like your favorite song that you listen to it over and over and over again, and if you're riding in the car, you get upset if someone else is riding in the car with you because they're going to think that you're weird because you listen to the song 4, 5, 6 times in a row. That's how I am with The Idea of Ancestry by Etheridge Knight. And so let me know. Let me
Yeah,
know if you
yeah,
have any follow ups or anything like that.
yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to just say I really relate to when you're speaking about your uncles. Most of my uncles likewise were in the mix, and they, but my parents basically kept them away from me, other than like some drunken phone calls at night, when I was a teenager, other than that, like it was pretty much, we were the twain did not meet until
And
I
it
was.
worked. Look at you now, man. It worked.
Oh yeah, it was the right call. It was the right call. But like you, when I started to, get older and to, read like street literature and read, I was like, oh, this is sort of, this is a part of my family history essentially, right?
Right,
That has
right,
been
right.
kept from me,
Yeah.
right? And so that was part of,
Yeah.
yeah, like my fascination with it, was that these stories were so close to me and yet so far away. Um, and so, so that's always been interesting to me. So I really relate it to, to just what you said about that. Um,
Yeah.
do you have the poem at hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could
Yeah.
you
I do.
please read it?
Yeah. So I can read The Idea of Ancestry. It is a longer poem.
Okay.
But whatever. It's not an epic poem. But
Okay.
here we go, man. The Idea of Ancestry by Etheridge Knight. Taped to the wall of my cell are 47 pictures, 47 black faces, my mother, my father, grandmothers, one dead, grandfathers, both dead, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, first and second, nieces and nephews. They stare across the space of me sprawling on my bunk. I know their dark eyes, they know mine. I know their style, they know mine. I am all of them, they are all of me. They are formers, I am a thief. I am me. They are thee. I have at one time or another been in love with my mother, one grandmother, two sisters, two aunts, one went to the asylum, and 5 cousins. I am now in love with my 7-year-old niece. She sends me letters in large block print, and her picture is the only one that smiles at me. I have the same name as one grandfather, 3 cousins, 3 nephews, and 1 uncle. The uncle disappeared when he was just 15. He took off in a freight. He took off and caught a freight, they say. He's discussed each year when the family has a reunion. He causes uneasiness in the clan. He is an empty space. My father's mother, who is 93 and who keeps the family Bible with everybody's birthdays and death dates in it, always mentions him. There is no place in the Bible for whereabouts unknown. Each fall, the graves of my grandfathers call me. The brown hills and red gullies of Mississippi send out their electric messages, galvanizing my genes. Last year, like a salmon quitting the cold ocean, leaping and bucking up its birth stream. I hitchhiked my way from Louisiana with 16 caps in my pocket and a monkey on my back. And I almost kicked it with the kinfolks. I watched barefooted in my grandmother's backyard. I smelled the old land in the woods. I sipped corn whiskey from fruit jars with the men. I flirted with the women. I had a ball till the cats ran out and my habit came down. That night I looked at my grandmother and split. My guts were screaming for junk, but I was almost contented. I had almost caught up with me. The next day in Memphis, I cracked a crocus crib for a fix. This year, there was a gray stone wall damming up my stream. And when the falling leaves stir my jeans, I pace my cell, or flop on my bunk and stare at 47 black faces across the space. I am all of them. They are all of me. I am me. They are thee. And I have no children to float in the space in between.
Wow. Thank you so much. And thank you to Etheridge Knight as well. But that was a brilliant reading. Thank you. Yeah, just one follow-up question, I suppose, which is, Etheridge Knight spent several years in prison, right? Really,
yes, he did.
Really behind his drug habit, as and then the crimes that come with that. This is a really broad question, but I mean, I think especially in these times where people are, in various parts of the world, right? They're dealing with levels of confinement that are, much harsher than ours right now. and trying to like just, you know, find ways to continue to be human, find ways to continue to be creative. How do you think Etheridge Knight kind of summoned the courage, the human courage and the creative courage to, you know, to use that imprisonment? You know, how do you think that his imprisonment, you know, inspired his writing, I suppose?
So he writes about, it's very introspective. Mm-hmm. His writing is very introspective. And when you are in a state of incarceration, you try to be as productive as possible. And in the poem that I just read, the idea of ancestry, he's criticizing himself. He's self-reflecting, almost to the point where he is harming himself because he's being so hard on himself. And one gets the sense that if he were not confined, he would not be able to have this dialogue with himself. Right? And I think that, you know, you made the comparison between what's happening right now due to COVID-19 and shelter in place, martial law, whatever you want to call it, people, you know, being commanded to stay in their homes. Even with this world order, which is, I think, I have a lot of issues with. But even with that, I would not say that it is similar to what Etheridge Knight is going through. He says, he compares himself to a salmon that by instinct, they go back upstream at a certain time of year. No one has to remind them. Like there's no human saying, okay, guys, you know, time to go upstream and lay eggs. Like they know it internally in their souls, in their being. It is innate. They know when it's time to go upstream. And similarly, he knows when it's time to go back down to Mississippi. He's living the life of an addict, the life of a vagabond. He's traveling, going from place to place, wherever his addiction carries him. He doesn't have any children, so he's doing what he wants to do on one hand, and he's also enslaved by his addiction, right?
Right.
So it's like freedom and incarceration at the same time, even when he is free, right? Right. And so, but at a certain time of the year, he knows, just like a salmon knows to go upstream. He knows it's time to go back down to Mississippi. Like he that's a part of his being, to reconnect with his family. Like he has to do that. He would not be whole unless he did that. And so now he's feeling that. He's like, oh, snap. It's time to go back down to Mississippi. Right. But he says there's a gray wall damming his stream. So this prison wall, he can't see any women. He cannot see his family. He cannot put his feet in the Mississippi dirt and just walk around and just all of those things that make him human. He can't do that. And so he has those pictures, right? And he says he flops on his cell like a fish. And he has those 47 pictures, which indicates that he's been in there a long time. He's going to be in there a long time because he's really made a home of the place, right? Right. I mean, it, to the extent that you can do such a thing, right? So he cannot leave. And then he's on his bunk looking at his family. So he has the one thing, he has those pictures, which he speaks about in the poem. But what he doesn't speak about in the poem is he also has his pen. And he also has a sheet of paper. And he also has his ability to tell a story. And he also has his ability to write poems. And so this poem that he's writing to us is what's keeping him sane.
Right.
And so he needs to do it, just like he innately needs to go down to Mississippi. He can't do that, but he can write. So this writing, one could argue, is more precious to him than his family. Right? Because that's another major key to himself and his character and how he identifies, right? And one more thing I wanted to say about the poem, you know, he's very hard on himself, and he says about his family, he says, "They are farmers. I am a thief." So they live off the land, they plant, they harvest, they eat, they live off the land, right? They take, but they also give back, and it's a cycle. He's a thief. All he does is take.
Right.
And not only take literally because he was arrested for stealing and as part of his addiction, right? But he's also taken from the family legacy because he can't be there with them right now. And he's offered no children to the family. He's given nothing from his family. All he's done is take. That's the conclusion that he draws by the end of this poem. However, as readers, we know, nah, brother, you did your family such an amazing, you did them justice, man, in such an amazing way, because we have this poem. Your family is immortal. People all around the world are now reading about your family and your grandmother and your uncle that is missing from the family, but we know about him as readers due to your gift and you sharing your gift as an artist with the world. And so he makes himself a very sympathetic character by the end, because it's just like, you don't know how great you truly are.
Yeah.
And your family should appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate it as fans of literature. Yeah. So for all of those reasons, I love Etheridge Knight, and that's how his incarceration contributed to his gift that left him no other choice. Like, I have to share this gift because this is literally all that I have.
Thank you again for that incredible dive into the life and work of Etheridge Knight. Again, I'm Keenan Norris. It's been a pleasure to speak with Roger Porter. From the dull depths of quarantine and for as long as this mess lasts, peace.